Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Hello everyone. I'm Nobajat. I'm a multidisciplinary artist from London, England, and I came here to Zaratan to do a month-long residency program. My practice, my core practice is painting, and then I create installations or performances based on that kind of like the influences of the paintings. My work, but basically at some point in my artistic career, I realized that all of my role models, all of the painters that I really admired, they were all men, and subconsciously I kind of painted not like them, I painted like me, but I painted like me in a way that is kind of like more reflecting and getting the influence from men painters. And then at some point it just didn't work anymore. I felt like I'm not representing my own body and like how I embody and how I basically create art. And so I started to kind of obviously look at the other female artists with more attention and kind of prioritizing it even. But also I started to do research into women, non-binary people narratives that are either not talked about, hidden, forgotten in a way. And I did a lot of research about witch trials and witch hunts in Western Europe during the 16th and 17th centuries, and the estimated number of 80% of it were women who were executed is roughly, like not me, the historians are estimated it to be between 50,000 to 80,000 women who were in England, Scotland, Germany. They were very ruthlessly burned or hanged and then burned, all sorts of versions. And it's basically a massive massacre. And is it in history books? No, nobody learns about it. How come? We learn about other wars or other population who were destroyed. So there's a lot of questions about who, obviously our history, the history that we're learning is not kind of not relating to these kind of issues. And I kind of just take inspiration from that. It doesn't necessarily mean that my paintings would be directly about witch hunts, but it's very present for me as something that is there, but we don't relate to or we don't talk about it. And so it's kind of there, but it's forgotten. And I'm trying to kind of bring it back to me, to my practice, and kind of my body, how do I feel about my body in this world. I'm also gay, so that's kind of another layer of how do I feel inside my body. Sometimes I feel more feminine, sometimes I feel more masculine, and it's I think there's some kind of a mold of how you should be. So the witch hunt basically excluded or targeted women who were widows, healers, midwives. If you had pets, you were considered to be a witch. All sorts of weird things that for them, women were just being killed. And when I came here to Portugal, to Lisbon, I did a research, kind of research a little bit about like witch trials around here, and it's really interesting because actually in Portugal it was very mild, the whole thing in comparison. It was more theatrical, a lot more theatrical. So it was the Inquisitions. There's a fascinating article by Indira Leo. If I'm pronouncing they name right, who kind of takes 5 famous trials that the Inquisition held with women who were accused of witchcraft. It was a lot more kind of like dramatic, theatrical, but people weren't really, women weren't killed as much as, there were really like very, very few cases where like, I don't know, I don't want to say they're not, a wrong number, but really a few that you can kind of count. And the others who were accused of witchcraft or kind of forbidden magic, they were exiled to colonies, and even after the verdict, their trial were very kind of theatrical, and they were really smart. They were using these kind of trials to speak their minds in a way, and they were negotiating about their punishment. So a lot of them kind of like tried, and some of them succeeded to kind of like stay in Portugal, and they were pretending to be sick, pretending to be old, all sorts of things. But there was a lot of negotiation. It was completely different from Western Europe and what happened in Germany, Scotland, England. And then I kind of like did a little research about Lisbon itself, and apparently in Barro Alto, there were a coven of witches. Why there? And we're talking about between the 16th and 18th century. Lisbon was very, very poor, especially this area was very poor. There were a lot of diseases. People came from overseas, from colonies. So there were a lot of like Afro-Portuguese women, Maorish women, Jewish women who were forced to convert to Christianity, and there was all this kind of mix of cultures. And women in this specific part of Lisbon, they were called witches. There's even an alley, I think, named after a witch, like an anonymous witch. And they were basically supporting their communities. They were healers, they had knowledge, they helped with like childbirth, they were midwives. However, so people needed their services a lot. They helped people in their community, but they had to do it in hiding. And they called them witches because that kind of creates an image of something that is like forbidden, hidden, excluded, kind of not on the same level of the rest of the community, despite the fact that they were actually very knowledgeable and very helpful in a lot of cases. And they were, so for example, witches in that specific area in Lisbon, they used to live in upper floors with closed windows. They used the rooftop for drying herbs and stuff like that. And so people would come to them before the sunrise, so where it's still dark, and they used to knock on the windows, so the windows were closed, and they would kind of like do this. They would take care of people through windows, so kind of like behind the scene. And I think that was kind of like driven by fear of religious people, clerical people. I found it very inspiring. So that kind of inspired my series of painting in the other room, and the performance that you just see.
I'm curious about the title you choose for the exhibition, and maybe it can help us entering the theme of the paintings, also
Yeah.
the subjects that you are depicting.
Yeah.
I would be curious to know more about that.
Okay, yeah. So the title is Inner Skin, derme,
Mm-hmm.
derme in Portuguese, and it's the layer of the skin that is underneath the external layer, and it's a very important layer. It binds all a lot of things together and kind of make us actually work and protect the body. And but it's an inner kind of, it's kind of like operating inside or underneath the surface. And I think this kind of like notion of kind of like being good at what you do, but doing it kind of from a little like from a place who is like this, is kind of like how these women must felt, or how I feel sometimes, like in this world. I also really connected to the sea, and Lisbon being a port city. So usually my color palette is involves a lot of blues. Blue as a color has healing qualities. The spell that Katerina and Mariana did at the end of the performance is a very old Irish healing spell that is meant to heal all of us spiritually, mentally, to help our mental state to be whole and to call our lost parts.
I was also wondering, because this textile and the way they interact with the textile looks a bit like a skin or a kind of element that protect and that you can go out with. I'm curious, maybe if you can share a bit about how this idea for the performance came and how it changed in the process.
Yeah, so yes, it's like, yes, it is like skin. It's a hand dyed, it's basically a traditional canvas. So this canvas is used to be stretched on kind of like traditionally you stretch the canvas on stretchers. So first of all I'm taking it out of the stretcher. So I'm kind of like clearing out this traditional element of it, and then I hand dyed it in my bathroom, which is also like washing, like doing laundry in a way, but with pigments, and then I paint over it. And in that year for the performance, like why I wanted this specific work to become a performance piece. It comes from my interest in the dead and the alive element that there is in any artwork really, and this kind of tension between a live body and a dead painting, or is it alive maybe?
And I'm curious about the subjects of the painting. We see some strange anthropomorphic figures, but they look also like animals. I can see some reference probably to, at least in this one, to religion. There is something there that reminds me Egyptian gods, or but maybe it's me finding other references. Do you want to share a bit about your imaginarium connected to these characters and
Yes,
compositions?
like in the way of the painting. So yes. So this painting is titled Power, and it's also derived from the performance, and you basically answered yourself
Okay.
the question because everything you said is there. The religious element, but it's not. It's kind of like it feels religious, but it's a different religion. It's a new religion, it's all the new religion. It's not the religion that we know as like just church. And it is everything you said. There is some of the mythical Egyptian and religious. The religious is we use the word religious, but actually instead of religious I would say ceremonial. Yes, because I think the word religious connects directly to very specific to religions.
To a structure,
A structure.
spirituality that
Yeah.
has a hierarchy and
Yes,
rules.
exactly. And that is more of but I wanted it to feel like, but it's more of a ceremonial and it kind of drives from like half woman, half animal kind of figure. Inside that figure, this has two little witches holding hands. And they're kind of like buried or engraved inside it. And I wanted it to feel like an authority, but it's an authority of a different religion in a way. So.
I'm curious about the two figures there.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did they appear to you, or
You
well,
mean
something
technically or subject matter?
subjectly?
So they're just kind of two buried witches. I don't know witches like that because they weren't witches, they were just healers. But these are the two, and they're kind of buried inside that figure. And it's just dark, and there's like also eyes that kind of drives from them, and it's I think generations of women who were like silenced or being molded into something very specific role, specific. We think that we have like equal rights for women today, but I don't think it's true.
It's not.
We don't. Gemma, what do you say?
There is a lot of work to do. And actually something important that you mentioned, and I think it's meaningful, is that you're not just worried about women but also about the queer community. Because for me feminism is not really just about women, it's about how minorities are mistreated throughout history and how history is always written by men and by winners, and how things are forgotten. But we have a lot of work to do. Yes, unfortunately.
Yes, thank you for saying it. The queer community, what is queer? Anything that is out of a mainstream kind of living. I have a queer community of friends, gay, lesbian, homosexual friends, and I am gay, openly gay, and I don't, to be honest, I think that I experience more kind of difference by being a woman than by being gay. Like being a woman put me in a very specific, like having this body put me in a very specific place still. And yeah, everything is equal, but then women still have it. They need to have it all. They need to be like, they have to do a lot. Like, so they have a career, but they're also like giving birth and they're taking care of children, and they do, So is it equal? I don't know. Who am I to say? But for me, in my own body, in my own experience in the world, it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, and besides feeling like there are really numbers about it, like the salary is not equal, the number of women in power position is not equal. So we have this illusion, and we have done a lot of progress, of course. Like
Yeah.
if I hear the story from my grandmother, or of course things are getting better, but it's just an illusion. We need to
Yeah.
work on it.
Yeah, but there's this illusion.
And I was remembering about underline this thing of the queer community, because when you were speaking about witchcraft and how they were tortured by the system, I was remembering stories about when there was fascism in Portugal, and the story about the homosexual community are terrible. Like they were really persecuted, arrested, tortured, and we're speaking about the 50s until the 70s. It's very recent. We had an artist in last year that made a research about it, and I was very shocked about how it was something so strong and present, the persecution of the homosexual community. And when he was making the research, I was remembering about witchcraft, like.
So there was kind of the demonization of people who are basically like demonization of people.
Homosexuality.
Yeah, queer people, homosexual people, as in like, so demonizing them by kind of like referring to witchcraft. Is that what you meant?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's super interesting. It's really, really interesting. I should look into that. In England, I don't feel it, but honestly, like I feel more discriminated by being female than by being gay, which is a thing by itself. Yeah, but it's very, very interesting what you said. Yeah. Thank you.
Maybe I'm just a bit curious about the technical part,
Yeah.
in the sense that here you're presenting some very contained painting in small format, and then we have this big canvas. I'm curious if in your practice you used to work more in a small format, in a big format, or how, if it switch. I'm curious a bit about your relation with painting.
Good question. Good question. So I usually start with small papers. I like to work on paper. There's some. I work on square format, which is very intentionally against tradition, because traditional measurements are either landscape or portrait. You have it in, when you print something, you choose portrait or landscape. So, and that drives from traditional paintings who are either landscape or portrait. And square format is a weird format. It's weird by its own. It's very weird. It was a little bit weird to work with it in the beginning, but now I really like it. And I just make small paintings to start with, and then at some point when it feels right, I move to big.
Okay.
As big as the space can provide. So this one is, I think, 7 meter long, and 7 meter height and 180 width. But it's really, this specific piece is really influenced by the kind of theatrical riches, like the trials themselves. they were very, very theatrical, and I felt something that, you know, on one hand there's like all these kind of stories from, you know, really connected to the sea, women who are singing on stones and stuff like that, which are kind of like traditional to Portugal and Lisbon, and then yeah, and I forgot what I was saying. What was I saying? What am I talking about?
Is the connection of this painting with theater?
Theatrical,
It's
yeah.
theater.
So specifically in this one, thank you. I wanted it to hang like a theater drape, like a curtain. And a curtain, I use a lot, like I use curtain or a fan. It's like images that I kind of use in my practice because they're revealing, but then they can also be kind of closed or half open, and then they're like kind of hiding details. And the drape as well is hiding parts of the painting.
And is it something you had already experimented in the past to use this canvas with no structure? Okay.
Yeah, yes, I use it in several, like the last I had a few solo exhibitions, which I used it like this, several group exhibitions. It's something that I think, yeah, but for me, this is a good way to present, to work on a painting.
Yeah, I think it reflects a bit what your work speaks about. There it's also about escaping a bit the rigidity of social rules, and there is all this tenderness and this flexibility in it. Then I think it goes well with the theme you approach.
Oh, thank you. I think you should do the artist talk. You're saying everything, all the right things. You're saying all the right things.
You know all of that, but it's not coming
It's
because you are
experience.
15.
Sorry?
It's your work that said the things. It's just.
Thank you, but your very your perception is very good, and thank you for that. And yes, there is something very, I would say, liberating. By I still work on canvas sometimes, but then these are really liberating in a way because you just kind of hang it and you start painting it, and it can go all sorts of ways. You can paint on the floor, on the ceiling. It's very like flexible. Yeah.
Also the how do you say the cuts?
The cuts.
That create some three-dimensionality. It's very interesting.
Thank you so much
Thank you.
for coming. Thank you.